In my Music Mythos episode devoted to Michael Jackson, I made it emphatically known that I do not believe he was ever a pedophile.
Look at how Michael Jackson behaved when it was actually time for him to break the law. When he wanted to illegally anesthetize himself with propofol, he found Conrad Murray, a doctor with financial problems and a checkered past. In short, someone he could manipulate, someone he had leverage on, successfully covering his tracks quite literally until after his death in fear of the minor fine and possible community service sentence that would result from being convicted of such. But the Chandler and Arvizo families want us all to believe that when it came time for Michael Jackson to deflower a child, a crime that could put him away for the remainder of his life and ruin his entire career in the process, his master plan boiled down to, hey, hop on the bed in full view of your brother and we'll jerk each other off. I submit that given Michael's provable tactical acumen, not to mention financial resources, if he ever actually had diddled the kid, we wouldn't have ever heard one mumbling fucking word about it. The fact that there even was a trial is to me almost proof enough that Michael Jackson never inappropriately laid a hand on a kid in his life.
I asserted my reasons effectively, I feel, but the time constraints involved also, I felt, made my rebuttal a cursory one by nature. I'd always intended to append those thoughts with something more in-depth and comprehensive at a later date, and then, just this past week, the story broke, providing me with just such an opportunity. Look, you've been forewarned. Today's video is not primarily comedic in nature, but rather a categorical defense of Michael Jackson, a man no longer alive to defend himself. I would first, to that end, like to extend my condolences to the family of Michael Jackson, most specifically his children, who through no fault of their own or their father's have been made to endure an onslaught of idiocy based on laughable evidence and thanks to a remorseless media with an axe to grind, one that simply will not die. You're not alone. Pun only slightly intended. Some of us do know the facts, and your father's innocence, once you look at those facts, is immutable. Never weaken. We're with you in spirit, and Godspeed. I would be further remiss not to acknowledge attorney Tom Mesereau's tireless advocacy of Michael Jackson's innocence. It's easy to assume a celebrity defense attorney is merely in it for the Skrilla, and Tom has certainly made his. But the fact that Mr. Mesereau hasn't been employed by Jackson or his estate since 2005, yet never misses an opportunity to publicly articulate the case for his innocence in exhaustive detail more than a decade hence, is proof to me that his stance is more about principle than payola. I'm unashamed to admit that it's precisely through the promulgative efforts of Mr. Mesereau that I was first exposed to some of the more pertinent exculpatory evidence you will now be treated to. For further information on this topic, if you're interested, I cannot recommend his lectures, interviews, and writings vociferously enough. Now, before we move on with the body of today's rebuttal, we have to address and I employ the loosest possible interpretation of the word here, allegations that broke this past week contending that during 2003's raid of Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch, a veritable deluge of pedo porn, some of it violent and even bestial in nature, was recovered in the process. To quote Winston Churchill, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. And true to form, before anyone had seen fit to vet this story and verify that it conforms to the facts long since committed to public record, everyone from Jezebel.com to Breitbart News to the Huffington Post hit us with a hailstorm of horse shit. I'm not going to linger on this over much because the story's less than a week old and its efficacy has already begun to erode before our very eyes. But even a perfunctory glance at the evidence in the 2005 case reveals this to be bullshit squared. As FBI and court documents clearly show, the only article the prosecution could even vaguely construe as pedophilic was a coffee table book of art photography featuring fair-haired foundlings frolicking the fuck through dewy meadows, swimming in lakes, and other assorted stand-by-me shit. It's not only not pornographic, it's an art photography bestseller. Pretty much any asshat with a black turtleneck and a Nikon owns one. If that constitutes kiddie porn, well, you better lock up that Michelangelo prick because the Sistine Chapel is a palace of pedophilia. Hell, at a certain point in the trial, the prosecution were so desperate for viable evidence, they tried to attach a Hustler magazine recovered from Michael's home with Gavin Arvizo, the 2003 accuser. His fingerprints, they argued, were found on the magazine. The problem? His fingerprints were on the magazine because the prosecution had taken it out of its protective bag and handed the fuck to Gavin Arvizo during pre-trial interviews.
The three felonies that I observed firsthand and have firsthand knowledge of: fingerprint evidence, fabrication, The magazine had not been printed till 4, 5, 6 months after the war.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wagoner, your time is up.
And it was all captured on tape. You mean to tell me the prosecution were scraping the bottom of the evidentiary barrel so exquisitely goddamn hard that they went so far as to tamper with state's evidence, nearly inciting a retrial in the process, but they gave a mountain of kiddie torture porn a pass? Yes, seems fucking legit, Review Tech USA. Not that I expect sexual discernment from a baggy-eyed beluga so improbably fucking fat he couldn't pick his own cock out of a fucking lineup. Why don't you confine yourself to what you stick to best? E-drama, pedestrian opinions, and your own goddamn computer chair. You want to talk red flags and common sense, you diabetic golem? How about the red flag of none of this shit being entered into evidence? So no, I don't believe Michael Jackson was a pedophile, and I've made that determination based entirely on empirical fact, mind you. Something the story, originally leaked by inveterate tabloid Radar Online, did not traffic in whatsoever. Not one article of evidence, not one witness statement, a leaked video of the Neverland raid itself that does not show the recovery of one item of pornography, straight, gay, or otherwise, and what little horseshit and hearsay it does proffer is contradicted by publicly available FBI and Santa Maria court documents that make not one solitary mention of any cow-fucking kitty porn having been recovered from Neverland Ranch. Hell, even the article in question links to another horrifically sourced article of an interview with one of Michael Jackson's many hush-hush girlfriends, in which she says in no uncertain terms that he didn't own child porn, boned bitches like it was going out of style, and emphatically states that he did not fuck kids. Not only does the evidence contradict the story, the fucking story contradicts the story. Breitbart, Jezebel, Huffington Post, and most importantly, Radar Online, you now have exactly one job. Either corroborate your claims with substantive evidence, or retract this defamatory dog shit fucking yesterday. The man is dead. He's dead largely because of his inability to deal with the unceasing barrage of bullshit, unsourced, opprobrious tripe like this, and if no one else is gonna speak up in his defense, then fuck you! I'll erect the finger and do it myself. And with that, we move on to the rebuttal at large. Whereas, depending on who you ask, descriptions of the 2005 Arvizo molestation case can vacillate from he was guilty but they just couldn't prove it, to railroad job to the umpteenth power, and embarrassment to the legal profession at large, public sentiment for the original allegations in '93 are about as mixed as the Aryan youth. As such, in preparing this comprehensive rebuttal of the recent spurious allegations that Michael Jackson owned gruesome child pornography, I came to one sobering realization, folks. Categorically obliterating these accusations would be impossible without focusing almost exclusively on the 1993 accuser that for some ludicrous reason everyone still largely believes in fact was molested. His name? Jordan Chandler, but sadly as we roll the fuck on here, I think you'll see the child was really a secondary accessory to a successful extortion attempt by another man, one who committed suicide just months after Jackson's death by the name of Evan Chandler. While some overzealous Jackson fans have ascribed motive to the suicide, claiming he was awash with guilt, the man left no suicide note I'm aware of, so to hypothesize as to his mental state beyond being in profoundly poor taste would be an exercise in futility. And given that rampant speculation without proof is what largely got Michael Jackson in this position to begin with, I would hope his fan base would recognize the perils of perpetrating the very same against his extortionist. And make no mistake, Evan Chandler was an extortionist.
This man is going to be humiliated beyond belief. He will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen to him. Beyond his worst nightmares. Sell one more record. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want. They will be destroyed forever.
That phone call is from after Jordan Chandler was allegedly molested. Yet not one word about his son having been victimized, despite the fact that theoretically the wound would have still been fresh at that point. Instead of an indignant father, we get a rather callous, cold, and calculating assertion of Evan Chandler's plan to destroy Michael Jackson if he doesn't get, quote, what he wants. And what he wanted, folks, was Hollywood success. Evan Chandler, you see, was a dentist by trade, one with a pattern of behavior showing he had a tendency to latch on to famous figures and leech them fucking dry. A chance encounter encounter with Mel Brooks, one we're still not certain wasn't engineered as a favor from Michael Jackson, would lead to Evan Chandler being the screenwriter and co-producer of Robin Hood Men in Tights. But as Michael's favors began to dry up, so did Evan Chandler's affection for the King of Pop. An adversarial relationship, one that mirrored in many respects Michael's own struggle with his domineering father, developed, that led the divorce-afflicted Chandler child to turn to Michael Jackson for comfort and companionship in lieu of his biological parents. Then Evan Chandler hooked up with prosecuting attorney Larry Feldman, whose moral repute, to put it bluntly, falls somewhere between Johnny Cochran and Snidely Whiplash. And I note that many people fond of employing the term red flags in connection with Michael Jackson's interest in children fall mysteriously goddamn silent when it's pointed out that Larry Feldman consulted in both the 1993 molestation case and the 2005 case with Gavin Arvizo. That's right, both cases involve the same limber dick fucking lawyer. Motherfucker, there ain't a flag big enough or a color red enough to convey the conflict of interest there, but hey, at least the same vindictive ass district attorney pushed both cases despite a dearth of evidence and a surfeit of hearsay. Otherwise, I might actually think there was a fucking professional vendetta at play or something. Then Evan Chandler, a dentist by trade, hooked up with Jordan's stepfather, the co-conspirator recorded on a phone call I just played earlier, and scheduled an impromptu dental exam. Right, the original confession was elicited while Jordan Chandler was under the influence of laughing gas. Look, we will never know exactly what occurred in that dentist chair, but if you're arguing that the existence of a leading question or 17 or even outright suggestion is an Olympian leap of logic here, you are far more trusting soul than I, my friend, particularly given the menacing tone of the recorded phone calls in question. For all the talk of Neverland Ranch's creepy pedophilic undertones by the flopping flaccid dickheads in the tabloid media, it should interest you to discover that the 1993 accuser never claimed to have been molested at Neverland. He claimed rather that he was molested in Monaco. What you're about to watch is a clip from an indescribably biased documentary from 2007, rife with factual inaccuracies, whose entire premise is that Michael Jackson was a pedophile. But what it does function as is a bit of a primer for the accusations themselves, so take what you're about to watch with a grain of bullshit.
The honeymoon with Geordie Chandler in Monaco was interesting on several levels because they traveled there for the awards ceremony, the World Music Awards, but he took not only Geordie Chandler, but his mother and his sister. In very typical fashion, he gave the mother a credit card and said, go shopping. It was just Geordie and Michael in that room.
Only Michael Jackson and Geordie can ever really know what happened in that room. But all we know for sure is that while the awards ceremony continued, Jackson and Geordie remained in the suite.
Having now absorbed that cyclopean dollop of disinformation, briefly plant yourself in Chester Molester's pedopumps. You're Michael Jackson, a provably shrewd, calculating individual. You learned the moonwalk in the late 70s, yet waited nearly 5 years to break it the fuck out at Motown 25 for precisely the right moment to catapult you to superstardom. Through raw business acumen and cunning, you now own the two most remunerative musical catalogs in existence outside your fucking own, purchasing half of Sony Music Publishing in the process. While you may not be a pedophile, you've certainly committed lesser crimes in the past. Doctor shopping, illicit and prescription drug addiction, yet you were so adept at crossing every T and dotting every I that not even your wife knew you may have a problem until you outright collapsed on stage.
Did you suspect a drug problem?
Honestly, I didn't really suspect and catch on until just before I filed for divorce. You know, there was just an occasion, an incident where he had collapsed and he was in the hospital.
This is during the HBO.
This was an appearance he was supposed to make.
And now it's time to apply that canny tactical acuity. You want to butt-fuck a kid. You have a choice of time and location. A cavernous, sprawling Neverland estate with countless winding corridors and cozy hidden rooms and compartments away from prying eyes, replete with security guards, a silent alarm system, and a secret fireplace exit?
I was in his room of accomplishments, looking at his platinums, and then I turned around and I seen a chest set. It was platinum and gold. And I did not know because I thought I came in the one door, which is the only way in and the only way out. But didn't know that he had a secret door from the fireplace that was a fake fireplace. Wow. It was a door. He came in that door, and it's so quiet. I thought, you know, when you hear doors, you hear no sound. So he came behind me and put his hand on my shoulder, and I fell to my feet. He started busting out laughing at me.
Or a 5-star European hotel you've been photographed at with the child while a bodyguard is present and while suffering from the fucking flu.
So why did no one stop him? Not the police, not Geordie's mother, and not Jackson's manager. On the suite of the awards, Geordie and Michael were in there with flu.
I got the doctor to come. They said they had the flu, so to get a doctor. And the mother and daughter went out shopping to Italy, and they were in the suite with the flu.
I don't know about you, but nothing brings my apathetic crank to full fucking attention like nasal phlegm and 100-degree fevers. I mean, if Michael had been so inclined, and he wasn't, folks, he basically had a ready-made pedo chateau at Neverland, and the Chandlers want us all to believe he decided to bone the kid on foreign soil in the completely uncontrollable environs of the World Music Awards in Monaco while they were both miserably ill, and not one fucking day after Michael Jackson was photographed with the accuser and his sister bouncing on his butt fucking lap. It more than strains credulity, people. It obliterates it, annihilates it, bends it over the mantle and spanks it harder than a porn star with daddy issues. Oh, into the walking pair of crow's feet in the documentary flapping her spray tan jowls about Michael bouncing Jordan Chandler up and down on his lap.
He was bouncing Geordie up and down on his lap. His nickname for the boy was Rubba. Whispering, rubber, rubber.
Yeah, well, unless Jordan Chandler got a JonBenet makeover, that appears to be his sister bouncing up and down on Michael's lap. And so long as we're correcting flagrant factual errors, Bob Jones was never Michael Jackson's manager. He was a fucking publicist. Yet this documentary aired with this ceaseless procession of screaming circumstantial inaccuracies, uncut from the broadcast, with nary a toffee-nosed twat at Channel 4 in the UK so much as raising a bushy brow at something publicly available footage proves was a bald-faced fucking lie. Are you beginning to better understand the daisy chain of disinformation plucked from the tabloid press playbook in effect wherever Michael Jackson is concerned? The reasons for this coverage, however, have never been mysterious.
I came to New York and asked them I told them I wanted to publish a book that was going to talk about Michael Jackson not guilty. They said, we don't want anything that's pro-Jackson.